Can somebody give me an amen in this joint? Welcome back to Growing All Beings. I'm your host, DJ, along with the lovely
Boston Bia.
I'll tell you what, and you know what? Occasionally we do shows that a little bit different from what we normally doing.
Because a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of rock and roll. There you go.
That's it. You could have some TV. You could have some true crime. You could have music. We did movies on here with Mazda.
We
dabble in a bunch of different things. And you know what? Maybe I should sing first. Are you ready?
Sure.
I once had a girl, or as they say, she once had me. She showed me her room. Isn't it good? Norwegian wood. There we go. I just want to sing a little bit of the Beatles. Don't know why that was on my mind, but I had to play it. So our guest, you have heard about him extensively. The audience has not. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Swiss Miss is here. Grandma's here. Debbie Blair, hello, love, is here. Hey, hello, Jerry Harris. How are you? Welcome. And thank you very much for showing up for this. It should be a fun time. My throat probably has about an, hey, what's up, Helly B? Good evening from Scotland. Welcome to the show, mate. It's good to have you. So, you know, we love people from the UK in this joint. So I was very excited. Hi, Diane. To have on this gentleman. He's been a friend of mine. Rocker Chick is here. Ozzy loved the Beatles, didn't he? He loved the Beatles. This gentleman, you guys have heard me talk extensively about my high school in New York, Hendrick Hudson and all that. There are people from Hendrick Hudson who have been on the show. You haven't heard as much about my high school in Florida. And one of the best things about that 2 years in Florida was my next guest here. He is the one who taught me a lot about rock and roll. He is the one who showed me that you could actually go from not playing guitar to playing guitar because that's what he wanted to do. And he's like, it doesn't matter if I know how to thank you very much, Swiss Miss. I appreciate that, love. It doesn't matter if I know how to read music. I'm going to teach myself to play all these songs that I want to play. And he showed me the way. I mean, I could go to his house and go in his room and request songs and he would play them. And it was fantastic. And through that, we both had an affinity for this gentleman right here who became the lead singer of Black Sabbath as a young man. And then after being fired by the band, struck out on his own and became even bigger than, I guess, you know what? We'll ask Hank if he thinks he was bigger than the band was. So without further ado, please welcome my friend from Florida, the heavy metal guitar player from South Florida, Hank Edney.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, brother.
Always a pleasure and an honor to talk to you, Hank. You are my connection to those days at JP Taravella where, you know, we were less than stellar students, but, you know, we were pretty good kids.
Fair enough.
Is that fair? Okay.
And don't forget our stint in auto mechanics at the other high school there. They let us into.
Us in auto mechanics class over at Coral Springs High School. Bless
you were definitely the favorite of that teacher. You derelict, you.
Ah, yeah, Mr. Byrne. Who could
Mr.
forget?
Byrne.
Or Mr. Bernie, as you used to call him. You pronounce the E, and who was from Boston, for Christ's sakes, wearing Sparrow topsiders in Florida. All right, Hank, I wanted to get, just to kick this off, I wanted to get Bia to read something that she researched about Ozzy on Twitter, and I thought that this would be an appropriate way to kind of frame why we're talking about Ozzy tonight. Please take it away, Bia.
Oh, I thought you were going to bring it up on screen. Okay.
Oh, shall I? I mean, I can.
I mean, I can read it from what I
Yeah, if
sent.
you,
Yeah.
I will try to bring it up. I'm sorry that I didn't download it, but I'll try
No,
to do
that's
that
okay.
while you're
No, it's fine.
talking. All right.
So, yes. So I'm just, don't mind me. I'll be looking down to see it. All right. So some ask, why are so many people mourning over Ozzy? People act like they knew the man. It's not so much mourning over the man, it's mourning over a time in all of our lives that we can never go back to. Every song holds a place and time of memory for us. Every song reminds us of our youth and our mortality. His music came at a time when we were teenagers and young adults, the time we felt carefree and life was endless. His songs were played at milestones in our lives, graduation parties, turning 21, weddings, driving our first car with the windows down and the music blaring. His family lost a husband, father, brother, son, and friend. We just lost a part of our youth. And today, July 30th, 2025, as the world watches his final procession through Birmingham, we say goodbye not only to the man, but to a piece of our own past.
Man, I really love that because it does put into context that time in our lives and how important that was, and how it was a formative. Hello, Scott McGinnis. How are you? Welcome, sir. Um, Diane Keeley says Florida, home of Skinnerd. Damn right, and home of the Allman Brothers as well. So, Hank, with that, can you give me your initial thoughts and kind of frame? Do you want to start off with framing Ozzy, and then we can go into Black Sabbath?
That's fine. I mean, that was my major introduction to him. Was more as a solo artist. Sabbath was kind of before my time. We all knew Paranoid and Iron Man from the radio,
God,
but
yeah.
I didn't have anybody around me, older peers or anything that had Black Sabbath going previous. So I mean, that's kind of where it started for me. And then once you appreciated the man, then you went backwards in his catalog. But what she just read just nails it 100% because he was that person, that musical artist for decades, from the 70s, from Sabbath through, decades on until now. The guy just did not quit. He was a trooper, kept on going, maybe even longer than some might have thought. For me, I wasn't a huge fan of the last chapter of him.
Right.
But then when you go back and then you realize he's gone, and you look back through the history, some of it you forget, but you realize the guy was a trooper, and all he wanted to do was get out there and do it.
Yeah, and I mean, when I first heard Paranoid, I was unaware that the lead singer was a guy named Ozzy Osbourne, and it was probably right around that year. It might have been in that year in between before they really stood up that band and released Wizard of Oz. So it might have been eighth grade or something like that, when I heard Paranoid. I remember going to the mall and looking for that album, and someone told me the name, and that weird album cover with the guy with the kind of weird motorcycle helmet and the kind of, it was almost like a Ziggy Stardust skin tight suit on. It was kind of weird, but man, it was something else. So
Yeah,
that
that was not their original cover that they wanted either. The I can't remember what the label turned down, but that's not what Sabbath wanted. Apparently it was probably too heavy, a little too evil looking, that they threw that up.
yeah.
And to name the album that song, which I found out not too long ago was a filler song because they didn't have enough songs time wise for that album. They just like threw that song together because if you know that album, it doesn't really sound like the rest of that album.
I have to go back and listen to it now because I haven't listened to it since I had it on vinyl. Well, I'm sure I had the cassette at one point as well, but I know it was one of the. I remember going and buying that record when I heard that because it was just so perfect. That song was just so brilliant, and yeah. Now I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the rest of it because I could see that, but then when you hear even that original album, you hear people like Ice-T, the rapper Ice-T was inspired by Black Sabbath. I'm like, what? Like, that's so surprising, but apparently a lot of artists. Do you know some artists that were inspired by them? Obviously, Motley Crue
Oh,
was, but
yeah, no, I mean the crossover there, it's and then as his career extended out, it's like you find people that from all different genres of music that you would never think would be able to appreciate Ozzy or Sabbath, and they're all about it because they could key into what the magic was with the man. That's what I think.
good evening, Dennis Sweeney, and that's interesting. Rocker Chick is saying that Ozzy said his favorite song to perform live was Paranoid. So that's really interesting. ML is saying friends and let's get it up on screen here. ML is saying, and by the way, if somebody wants to call in, I'll get my phone connected up here. To let me get my phone connected. I forgot to do that, so it'll get connected up to this little studio thingy in case somebody wants to make a call. Okay, and just give me 1 sec, y'all, and we will be connected. Okay. All right, we are connected just in case somebody wants to call. ML says friends and I were at Black Sabbath concert in Greensboro, North Carolina, 1974. Drove from Fort Bragg, home of Delta Force, where we were stationed in the 1970s. Was a great time for rock and roll. Man, 74, that would have been insane. That would have been, probably a couple, 4 years, 3 or 4 years before they took Van Halen on tour.
Yeah.
Let me, in terms of Ozzy, what was it about that first album, Blizzard of Oz, that resonated with you?
Well, for anybody that was even thinking about guitar, you were just, that was the next thing after you got blown away by Eddie Van Halen. That the guitar, the gunslinger era had started with Eddie, and then pretty much the next thing to come along as far as mainstream was Randy. So, as soon as you heard that opening riff of Crazy Train, and then you're like, oh, okay, more of that, and then you got that album and heard the whole, all the rest of it. That was it. That was the hook, is the guitar. And I think that's a big credit to Ozzy, is he knew talent when he saw it. Because if you think of the dynamic of when you're going to start up another band, you just got fired from Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And now you have to recreate something that's, that's where you were. You want to stay at that level. No discredit to a singer, a song, but he's not the songwriter. He's not coming up with riffs. Heavy music is dominated by, say, guitar and drums. So mm-hmm. you've got to go out and find somebody who's going to carry that torch for you, when the last guy was Tony Iommi.
Yeah, you have to nail that, because if you miss on either one of those two, it's not going to work. You can get away with a bass player who's not stellar. And I don't know, according to Eddie, Michael Anthony was not stellar. Eddie Van Halen's a little bit of a hothead, but the guy that he's talking about, just so that, and maybe he can kind of elaborate on Randy Rhoads a little bit, and I'll just set the table with this. Ozzy had done basically, I think they set up a studio. They had an open call to guitar players. I can't tell you the guys that came and played. At the time, I think I might have known a few, but I do know that when this little guy came in, Randy Rhoads, who now we know from watching that documentary, they were kind of like, the band was really those two, according to the other members of Ozzy's original band. The band was those two, and the other people were hired around those two. But when Randy walked in, that was it. As soon as he started to play, Ozzy was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, man, this guy's going to be it, right? I mean, That was a done deal, right?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of guys on the short list that went on to do great things, like George Lynch from Dokken. He actually had the gig for like 5 minutes. John Sykes, who did Thin Lizzy, then went on to write the greatest selling Whitesnake album of all time. He was on the short list. A couple other people like that.
Right.
But you see the interviews with Ozzy, and he's just like, how many people had he seen play before he saw Randy? Probably days of auditions, people playing God knows what. You're trying to impress this man. Maybe you don't even know who he is. You just think, oh, okay, here's some good work, but then Randy just played whatever he played, in such a short amount of time, that's going to let you know this is the guy that's going to carry me forward as a songwriter, as a gunslinger. There's just a certain wisdom to, I think, Ozzy in that way, and he deserves a lot of credit for that, for him and for then everyone else that he picked after after all that time. As tragic as it was that Randy was gone, then he found somebody else. He found Jake. He wanted to go in another direction. He needed to just do something different. He wasn't going to try and replace Randy. You can't replace that guy. And then the music had changed. Like hair metal was kind of coming up at that time. Jake was perfect for that.
Great hair.
Couple albums of that, but that didn't last. And then, then he comes along and he finds Zach. Same thing. Zach had never done anything previous that was big. He was not a name before Ozzy found him. But again, Ozzy saw in him something that was going to carry forward the Ozzy machine. And it did huge.
Let me ask you, where is Randy on your list of all-time favorite guitar players?
Well, he's at the top because it's a pioneering thing that he deserves credit for as a player. As far as an originality kind of thing, he brought classical into the mix. As far as the way he carried himself in a very heavy genre. But, as far as where music was at, where guitar playing was at the time that he came around, that was huge. That was just like right up under Eddie. Eddie kind of reinvented the instrument, and, also a great songwriter, a great singer. If you want to look, if you want to, really get into Van Halen, it's like excellent songwriter. They had signature harmonies. Like that was all Eddie. He didn't get credit for all that as much as he could have. But, Eddie breached that door, and then, Randy came storming right through it.
Is Eddie above Randy for you, or Randy above Eddie?
Well, Eddie for me can check more boxes. Like I said, like as a songwriter, as a band member, singing, signature harmonies, but Eddie had more time on this planet to do what he wanted to do. We only have two albums of Randy.
That's fair.
And there's the Quiet Riot stuff that he did out there before Ozzy snatched him up. But I don't think that really does him justice. That was just a band trying to figure out who they were. And there was a reason that they couldn't get signed at that time, and that he thought Ozzy would be a better idea.
It was very produced too. That album was very produced as well. So he didn't get to show everything that he could do. What do you think about a guy, when you look at Ozzy going into the local music store, posting that handwritten magic marker sign, which is just nuts. These guys reading, he goes, I don't know if this all as I know from down the way. Turned out it was him, wasn't it? Like, and he didn't know he couldn't have known that he could sing.
No, and I think he just had so much of not to discredit singers, but there's lots of people out there where talent is not at the forefront. It's their desire, it's their presence. Ozzy knew what he wanted, and it's like you can almost see in hindsight now he knew exactly how he needed to handle this. He talked his father into buying him a PA system, and if you're a singer that already has a PA, you're gold. You're going to have gigs lined up. And that's, you saw in that 9 Lives of Ozzy doc, they saw, singer with PA. You're automatically going to try that guy out to just see what happens next. It's like he already had that business mindset that, made his craft an empire from the very start.
And so here's one of our mods, Scott McGinnis, and we're going to get to you, Carolina Garcia. Let me just say hi, Carolina Garcia. She's a content creator. Her boyfriend, Vinny Adams, is a content creator. He's the host of Disclosure Team, and he's a tremendous interviewer. Hello, it's good to hear from you, my dear. Hands up for Ozzy. And Scott McGinnis, one of our newer mods, says, I already knew Ozzy from Black Sabbath days, but Blizzard of Oz in 1980 was huge. Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley were rock radio hits during the Death to Disco pushback era. No doubt about it, man. When I heard that was all over my high school. These were anthems at my high school at Hendrick Hudson, because obviously those were kind of really. I'm trying to think. So ninth grade. So this is the year before I came to Taravella. And then obviously they were still big when I was at Taravella with you in what was that, 82 when I got there? I want to say it was
Okay.
82. 82, 83.
Was your
And
sophomore year when you showed up at
yes.
wrestling with your construction boots on? They weren't happy.
Hey, construction boots were mandatory equipment at Hendrick Hudson. Flannels and construction boots.
I was impressed.
So Hank, what did you Ozzy, Vince Neil also was another. Yes, you Hell's Bells. So you can just call that number right there and call me right there, 719-602-4464. Let me open my Google Voice app just to make sure that it does everything it's supposed to do. And then we'll do this damn thing. There we go. Google Voice is open. So 719-602-4464. And you can give your thoughts about the untied construction boots. Yeah, I came from a very blue collar high school in New York to a very not blue collar high school in Florida. So the most blue collar thing in high school in Florida was probably Hank and Richie and company, the other metal kids. So anyway,
yeah, you were misfits if you were blue collar in that school.
Yes, definitely. It was a wealthy school and wealthy area. Probably not like that today. Well, that sounds backwards. Thank you, Linz. I appreciate it. I love you too. All right. So Hank, so there were a lot of guys that weren't talented singers that were great frontmen. Oz, I think, is what you're saying. He fit into that mold. Would you say, in talent wise, he and Vince Neil were? How would you adjudicate those two?
I don't want to sling mud at Vince. I mean, we've all seen what he looks and sounds like in the last 20 years. He fit a notch in that band. Singing was not what he's going to ever be known for. You and I, we were into the beginning early crew. First two albums, first one almost has like a punk vibe to it. So this is not going for vocal talent. Everyone in that band, well, Tommy Lee stuck out. That was a guy that could play his gear standalone. Everybody else, they had been doing what they were doing for 5 minutes before that album came on. That's what was part of their mystique. It was raw.
Yeah.
So
and just not the influence. He didn't have that. He couldn't carry the stage the way that Ozzy could. So if you would have took Vince Neil and put him in front of Ozzy's band, you would have gotten a good sounding band, but you wouldn't have had the same thing. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the guy doesn't carry himself very well live. He did in the younger years, but he never really tried to be a singer's singer anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But Ozzy did the best he could with what he had, and he had a range that, if you've ever seen someone try and do Sabbath and Ozzy covers, it's not easy. It is not easy to do those vocals.
Oh, God,
and he, and he held it up well, long into his, more senior years. Like that Black Rain album I sent you, the last one he did with Zach. He is in his senior time at that point, and he's still pulling it off. And he had a little help live. Sure. Everybody does.
All right. He's not the only one that had vocal synthesization. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, right.
And he was living hard long before he got sober. So to even do what he did, the way he lived his life, deserves some credit for that. But like I said, he was always the captain of an amazing ship. So the singing was just part of it. He knew how to promote himself and put out a full package. He knew how to get the quality gunslingers, guitar, bass, drums, anybody worthy of merit that you can think of. Pretty much they played or toured or recorded with Ozzy at some point from that genre. And he even, go ahead.
Yeah, there's two things. So I want to tell Hell's Bells. So for you, I'm sure you've dialed the US. It's going to be +01 and then the area code and number that you see at the bottom of the screen. So +01 and then 0 if you're calling from a cell, which I'm sure you are, +01 719 602 4464. And then the rest of you just omit the +01. Bia, did you have a question for Hank that you wanted to ask?
Do you know what Ozzy's real name is?
Of
John Michael Osbourne.
All right.
I just found that out. I don't think I knew that before I started going down the rabbit hole after he died, though, to be honest. I don't think I knew
Okay.
that.
All right. Cool.
Anything else, Bia, that you sort of would want to know about the era Ozzy, Black Sabbath?
I mean, I think those were different times. I think what you know, now with music's just not the same like it used to be, right? Like the raw singing, like now it's auto tune, and you know, it's just not the same. Don't you think? How like it's crazy how much music has changed.
Oh, 100%. It's a different thing live now. I mean, I was kind of disappointed the last couple of tours I've gone out and seen live because now, along with what you're saying, they've done the same for the visual presentation. Everyone has the huge screens behind them, which used to be so people in the back could have a close up version as if they were in the front. Now it's just taken on like a video, like you're just watching a video being filmed, and the fact that the band is actually performing live on stage is like secondary. I really thought that was disappointing. It's lost that magic that you're talking about that we used to go to see live bands for.
Right. And what you hear in the radio isn't what you when you go see them live. They sound like two different people. Like they don't even sound like the same singers anymore. Like you know what I mean? Compared to back in the older days.
Or they
Was
do,
that
because it sounds like exactly what you hear on the radio, because it's as much a process as it is their actual voice. It's
Right.
not live in the true sense of being live anymore.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about that extensively. We talked about Motley Crue. The thing that really hooked us, well, first of all, Ozzy's band was amazing live. We went to Hank and I both went to see this. We weren't together at that show, but we were both at that show. I think it was Diary of a Madman tour. I think you
It
said
was
90s.
it was Bark at the Moon.
Bark at the Moon because Jake was the guitar
Jake was
player.
on guitar. That was when Crew, Ozzy took Crew on the road with him,
Oh my
and
God.
Ozzy was humble, and he would take anybody on the road. Some people didn't want someone that might stage, show them up. Ozzy would take anybody from Motley Crue to Metallica. Yeah, come on, let's do it. Bands
And
that were on fire on their own, but Ozzy would take them.
so let's talk about that for a second. Um, Motley Crue was fire, and they were very dynamic live, and that was what sold us. And I'm going to just take an aside here, so a little detour. Hank and I have been talking extensively over the last year about U2, and Hank has become a bigger fan of U2 as a result of studying The Edge, and their live performances are there. I would say, I think it's fair to say their live performances are second to none when you talk about the authenticity of the band sounding like the record and being able to reproduce what they did in the studio live. Is that fair, Hank? Fair assessment? Whether or not you
100%.
love the music. Yeah. Okay.
No, and my appreciation is from you. Don't be so non-discretionary there. That's from
Okay.
you. You made me listen, and you would send me things and make me go, yeah. But no, they have that old school approach. Just guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and this is what you get.
And it's just like they played it, or better than what they did in the studio, which is,
Yeah,
the
they
band.
wouldn't. Yeah,
And the
they
Crew was like that, and Motley Crue was like that when we saw them, and Ozzy was like that, and Sabbath was like that. It wasn't complicated. It was something that you could reproduce, and to let people know, it Van. Ozzy didn't kick the Crew off tour like Hank just said. Then when they left the tour, it was because their management was telling them, okay, we can headline a tour now. We don't need to. They had done the US Festival and all. And if you know, to be fair, if you watch the US Festival, they're probably not even as, I mean, they were really great live. They probably weren't as good as U2 was live if you watch the US Festival. And if anybody out here has not gone to YouTube and go, and the reason I knew about this is because of that guy right there. He's the one who told me about the US Festival. Thank God Van Halen's on there. I mean, the amount of bands on there would blow your mind. It was in like NorCal, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Huge outdoor venue. And the Crew played there, and U2 played there. And U2 probably was even better live in that show than the Crew was. But they could have been absolutely wasted for all we know. Those guys could have been absolutely shot. But the point of the story that I wanted to tell you guys is that Black Sabbath kicked, or at least their management, because remember, their management was not Sharon. It was not Don Arden, her dad. I don't know who their management was. Their management were obviously assholes because they stole from them. But they kicked Van Halen off tour. And Van Halen at the time was such a dynamic band that you would not want them opening for you. That's how great, you have a guy jumping all over the stage. You had Eddie Van Halen with no shirt on and this kind of wild guitar. And when you bring Sabbath out, it's a slower burn. It's a more introspective type of a music. It's subtle. It builds to a crescendo. Van Halen came back and exploded on stage. So when Ozzy had the chance to bring out this dynamic band from SoCal named the Redondo Beach area and Motley Crue, they didn't kick them off tour, despite how great Motley Crue was. Is that a fair assessment, Hank?
Well, yeah. I mean, Ozzy took, what he wanted to do to that next level. He was of that same neighborhood that Crew was trying to come across. It was way more high speed than Black Sabbath. The music was more intense. The stage was there. Ozzy, with the people that he always had surrounding him, he could always hold his own. When we saw him with Crew opening, he had Tommy Aldridge on drums. Can't go wrong there. Jake
Awesome
on
player.
guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Jake on guitar. And then he had Bob Daisley, who recorded the first two Ozzy albums, with all the drama that went down with him and the original drummer, with Sharon. I guess there was a big lawsuit after that. But I think that says something for the way Ozzy was with the people around him, that they could find a common medium. And then Bob went out and toured with Ozzy after that, an amazing bass player. And that was always the case for Ozzy. Ozzy always had a live show that could stand up to anybody that he might have come out and open for him. Always.
I mean, his talent, his confidence, his connection with the audience is not you can sing great. So there's a lot of, for those of you who don't know, there are a lot of vocal coaches who basically get a bachelor's or a master's degree in music that is completely or almost nearly completely focused on vocals. Oh, this is so awesome. Ozzy had to step to liver. Oh, wow, man. Wow. Knowing Sharon, she'll say, for fuck's sake, stop sending me flowers, Oz. Like I've got the entire, she'd have like a yard full of flowers. That is really awesome to know that. That is so cool. Excuse me. I forgot where I was now. Oh, okay. So singing, you can sing wonderfully. You can have a wonderful voice. And I think what you guys should know, and Hank is well placed to tell you this because he was in a South Florida metal band that was that close to getting signed for a record deal. That close. And that's often the difference. I mean, there are bands out there that are as good as bands that are on stage that we know, that we have their CDs and we have their albums and we have their MP3s, and there are bands that didn't. But these people are the 1% of the 1% of musicians that are really good. So they're the 1%. You could say they're the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Is that Ozzy Osbourne, that no matter how good you think he is as a singer, no matter what a vocal coach might say, he can get on stage and sing and hold an audience and get an audience to hold their lighter or jump up and down or scream, or girls saying, "Put me on your shoulders," or the whole 9 yards. You could sing wonderfully and not do that. Or you could be a Whitney Houston, you could be,
That's the first person I thought of with where you're going.
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, I was watching the other night. Those of you, if you'd like to go and watch on Netflix, there's an Ed Sullivan documentary. He is the one who brought black artists onto television. People did not want black artists on CBS, for example, on live television. And here he is with Nat King Cole, and what's the other artist I was thinking of? There were so many of them in there. I mean, Harry Belafonte. I personally have never heard Harry Belafonte sing until the other night as a young person. I know him. I'm from We Are the World. You know what I mean? Our era, when he was already older, and he's still alive today. When Harry Belafonte walked out with a couple guys and sang, I mean, now you understand why he's this famous guy. There's just only so many people that can do what Ozzy Osbourne did, what Robert Plant did. These are birds of a feather. They may not win awards at a vocal competition, but these people could have tens or hundreds of thousands of people rocking to their music and hold their attention. And that is a skill.
And Ozzy deserves credit for that even more, for where he was when it started. I mean, he got fired from Black Sabbath. He was a hot mess. When you interview, when you see the interviews of them, they're like, "This is the last thing we wanted to do." But he was so out of control. We were so out of control. If he didn't go, then we would have been done. So that's where he has to start from. He's been fired from this band. He's got nothing. Sharon does take him in for reasons that would be hard to see at the time. He's just a hot mess. But she sees something in him, and then fast forward to the train rolling with the Blizzard of Oz. He started from a place where you thought, that's it. When he got fired from Sabbath, few people picked the pieces up from there and do what he did.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, reputationally, I mean, you look at certain players. I mean, Hank knows this because I've talked to him about it a couple times, but Pearl Jam had a drummer named Dave Abruzzese, who I absolutely loved. The way that he played those songs from Pearl Jam, Black, and all those songs, because I'm a drum fanatic, even though I'm not a terribly good drummer. I'm not a drummer per se. I can play the drums, but I'm not a drummer. I love the drums. And Dave Abruzzese, when he got fired from Pearl Jam, I mean, have you heard of him? He hasn't made it with his talent says he should be with a big band, but he's not, right?
I couldn't tell you one thing about him.
Exactly. Exactly. But if you look at that song Corduroy and that whole album, that was Dave. That whole Pearl Jam, that album after 10. He was amazing. I remember I went on deployment and wore that album out, that Pearl Jam record that had Corduroy and Yellow Ledbetter and all that stuff. So I would ask you, yes, what was Black Sabbath like with Ozzy and then with Ronnie James Dio? What did you see as the differences, and then how do you rank them?
Well, to finish what you were just saying, I think Ozzy deserves credit there, because he basically created almost the hired gun scenario, where people, like you're saying, the drummer from Pearl Jam, you didn't see him again. In the genre that Ozzy was in, somebody could disappear from a great band, and then they end up playing with him. If you had the skills, Ozzy would put you to work if he had a spot for you. Absolutely. So many, people that if you've never seen the Hired Gun documentary, you would enjoy that. Okay. Rudy Sarzo is the main character in it. You know how many bands that guy's been in.
That's right. So, he was with Quiet. Wasn't he with Quiet Riot too?
He was with Quiet Riot originally. That's where he met Randy. Yeah. He's from Hialeah. I actually met him in South Florida. I was doing guitar lessons at a little music store, and he came in and did an in-store. Like I think he was touring with Whitesnake by that time. But went to Hialeah High. Carlos Cavazo did too. That's how he ended up in Quiet Riot, was from knowing Rudy.
2 Latinos, Bia.
Yeah. But that I think that's very specific to the Ozzy hard rock genre, where it might not be over for you if you you lost your gig with one band. And Ozzy deserves more credit for putting people out there like that than anyone else. Mike Inez, before he got the Alice in Chains gig, he was touring with Ozzy, and then the original bass player passed away, and then Alice in Chains got a hold of him, and he was like, "Hey Ozzy, I got this thing," and he's like, "Go mate, go, do your thing." Robert Trujillo doing Suicidal Tendencies, touring with Black Sabbath, gets the Metallica gig when he's touring with Ozzy.
Changed his life.
Go, man, go do your thing.
And he's a Hall of Famer now as a result of that.
So, but to your question, my introduction really to Sabbath was with Ronnie James Dio, timeline wise, because like I said, the Sabbath stuff with Ozzy was kind of before my time. And then I'll never forget the first time I heard Neon Nights on the radio, and it was like, oh my, and it was a different Sabbath. This was not the same Sabbath. And that's one thing Tony Iommi deserves a lot of credit for, is that he almost seems to have written material based on who's fronting that band, because the Dio albums are of their own, just like the Ozzy stuff is of its own. When Ray Gillen came from Deep Purple and did an album with Sabbath, that was completely different. But that was my introduction to Sabbath. So it's probably for nostalgia. That'll have probably more importance to me. But I did go back, and Sabbath are the godfathers of metal. They deserve every bit of that for all the stuff that they did with Ozzy.
For both iterations. Someone, Hell's Bells is trying to call. I don't know why it didn't. Yeah, I didn't get, it's not showing. It should call. Let me see. The ringer's on. Yeah, it should ring. So there shouldn't be an issue if somebody wants to try to call. If anyone from the States wants to call, I'll try. We'll try to get you in there. It should work. Doesn't, as one of my former guests, Matt Knapp from Bigfoot Crossroads, told me, he has the Roadcaster Duo like I do. It doesn't always work, he said, but I didn't get a ring, so well, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Yeah, those are two very different bands. I actually liked both, and what's weird is I really love Ronnie James Dio and his voice and his metal, and it's totally different than Ozzy. There's nothing similar about those two, except that they both have they're both 1%ers. They both have a presence. You know what I mean? They both can grab an audience. And you pointed out he's this diminutive, like this little guy, Ronnie James Dio.
What a voice that comes out of that little man, though.
Oh, his voice much better than Ozzy's, but that's not the story told. It's not. And almost Ozzy deserves credit for his career in that template had been set to go off on your own as a solo artist, and then just start bringing in heavies if you got them. Because Dio pretty much did the same thing as Ozzy, rotating members. Yes.
He had Vivian Campbell for the first 3 albums, but then after that, it was kind of like Ozzy. Different gunslingers, different bass players, different drummers, same difference.
Vivian Campbell was awesome, man. I love that guy's guitar playing.
That's my favorite Dio stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah, that Holy Diver album. So those of you, first of all, let me just put up what Weird Debbie M is saying. I saw Black Sabbath twice, once with Dio and the other with Ozzy. Please, Debbie M, if you would put in the chat, tell us which you like better, if you feel that you want to say, or tell us what was different. Break that down for us. I think that would be great. Ozzy brought in Rick Wakeman to play piano on the song Sabracadabra from the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Wow, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
I didn't either. Yeah.
That's really cool. Like Rocker Chick said, Dio's voice was amazing. He was a more classic singer, but it didn't. He wasn't as successful as Ozzy because, well, tell people about Ozfest, so people should know.
I mean, that was when he was starting to wane. Like if you watch, in that Nine Lives documentary, and it's like his career had kind of run a certain circle, but he couldn't give it up. He couldn't give it up. And then, I think it was like Lollapalooza,
Sharon
and
called.
they didn't want him. So she's like, okay,
Young people
we'll do
don't like
our own.
Ozzy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see about that. How big was Ozfest? And and that just took that template that Ozzy used for bringing individuals in as a band to make his band. Now he's bringing bands in to his tour and doing the same thing for them that he was doing for individuals if they got into his band.
I mean, and now so now you had those young fans of all those bands that maybe didn't know Ozzy, but knew they were going to be at Ozfest. And then they got introduced to Ozzy himself, and they had different things where people went on stage with different artists. I mean, he did a nationwide tour with Ozfest and said, F you, Lollapalooza, I'll show you. You're doing a one venue, one night concert. I'm going to do 25 of them, or whatever his
Yeah,
score was.
and he upped the game. He had a second stage and a main stage that hadn't been done before. So even smaller bands that need to break even more were getting the opportunity with him with Ozfest.
So let me see. I got to get back to. Okay. Let me see. Rocker Chick says, I have seen both live with Black Sabbath, and they were both fantastic. So Rocker Chick from Canada, Canada, is not willing to weigh in on who's better. Thinks they were both great. And you know what? You don't have to, because they are both great. We have had extensive discussions about Van Halen and Van Hagar on here. And I'm going to say it here. I might alienate some of you. Let me get the rest of these out of the way. Viv has a great side band called Last in Line. I would love to hear that, because I think Viv is just his guitar solo, on Holy Diver is like life-changing. In fact, I had a skip in my album right during the opening of that guitar solo that I had to go get another record because it wouldn't go past that. It wouldn't go past the opening of that guitar solo. So what I would say is this. I am not a huge fan of Van Hagar, although I do really, really regard and respect Sammy Hagar. I do love Van Halen with David Lee Roth, and to me, that's the only Van Halen. And the Van Halen with Sammy Hagar is a completely different band. It's not even the same band.
That's two different chapters of somebody's career. That like you got Ozzy versus Ronnie as far as what they do, either solo or in Sabbath. But Van Halen with Hagar and with Roth, that's just two different things. That was Eddie just wanting to do something completely different with Hagar.
Yeah. He wanted to get away from. Eddie is, how would you describe? He's very mercurial. He had a very, very bad temper. His on-stage persona that we would have seen, and you saw them the same tour that I did, right? You were there with Amy, right? Your girlfriend?
Oh, wow. Hard flashback. Yeah, 84 tour. Yeah.
You were there with Amy, and I was there with Danielle and Lane from Coral Springs High School.
Wow.
And we passed you in the parking lot, which was weird. And Eddie's on-stage persona was very playful, smiling a lot, amazing on-stage presence. But apparently when you talk to people about, and this is not to anybody who loves it, this is not a rebuke or any sort of, I'm not trying to be derogatory. He had a bad temper. He got angry with people, and he had the ability to say very, very mean things. In fact, he did about Michael Anthony. The things that he said about Michael Anthony would your hair would blow back if Hank and I, in fact, had hair. So, so there's that, and that can't be forgotten. So he wanted to divorce himself from David Lee Roth. You heard his comments when Beck was on stage and Dave came out being Dave. And then you remember the comments that Eddie made about Dave. It really pissed him off. Do you remember that? When it was like, what was it, 2013? I don't remember what year that was. Might have been
That attempted reunion they had, is that's the
Yes.
time? Yeah.
At the MTV Awards. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like when you get back in the room with maybe your ex-wife you haven't had to deal with for a decade, and now she hasn't changed a bit,
Yes.
and there's not really a reason to do that. You're not at the LA Coliseum headlining Fair Warning, and you're still acting like you are. I get that. That was just a certain time for Van Halen, and it was done. And Eddie was long done with it, and Dave hadn't really done much since then. He did Eat 'Em and Smile. That was huge.
Yes.
Next album, yeah, okay, and then that was it. You didn't see
the
Dave
Lounge
again.
Lizard thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave was chomping at the bit just to get back out in front of a camera and a microphone. You could tell, and that's the last thing that he wanted.
And so we need to get two things in here. So Rocker Chick, tell us what it was like to meet Ozzy, because apparently you got to meet him. And Lindsay, our friend, Lindsay's our friend from Karen Reed. Lindsay is an adventurer. Lindsay will go, she will get in her car or get on a plane and go anywhere she wants to go, and not worried about, she doesn't need security around her. So Lindsay, let us know what it was like to meet Sammy. That would be really cool. Wall Psych, Wicked Sykes. I know that's someone from Massachusetts. I used to call 984 New Van Halen, even when it was still there. Yeah, I mean, when they brought in the keyboards, that was difficult, but I can tell you, Wicked Psych, Hank and I went and saw that tour. And Hank, when they opened up with Unchained, which is how they opened a lot of shows, what went through your mind? When you're sitting there, they had some jerry-rigged, kind of not great opening band, and then the lights went down and they opened with Unchained.
Well, that was my first time seeing Van Halen live. How, I don't know, because you remember the Sportatorium, even the short time that you lived in South Florida, everybody either started their tour or ended their tours there, but they made sure that they got there.
It's a Mecca. Mm-hmm.
And Van Halen had played there multiple times. I don't know how I missed those gigs, but that was the first time. So and that's back when you didn't have all kinds of video to watch on TV. So to see Eddie live up, we were close enough. Mm-hmm. And, a song like that just starts out just Eddie in your face. It's just beyond words. It was just amazing. And it was still all that you loved about the Roth era Van Halen in that tour, in that show.
It was. So it did not dim us at all that they had songs with keyboards and so forth in that 1984 tour. I have a whole story that I could tell you guys about. We became all right. So let me talk about this moment first, and then we'll get into the story. I've been to a lot of shows. I've been to a lot of concerts during that time. That's all we did. We went to concerts constantly at the Sportatorium. So I saw everything from Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Ozzy, the Scorpions. We just saw Bon Jovi. We saw tons of bands there in that couple of years. And I don't know if I've experienced anything musically as powerful as those first notes to Unchained played by Eddie Van Halen. And when you listen to it on YouTube, you're not going to be able to feel it. You would literally have to have speakers all around your living room and then a very high quality recording and turn that up to get close to what it felt like, how loud Van Halen was. There was a wall, like today we would have earplugs in because we're like worried about our hearing. We're older now. There's a wall of amplifiers and speakers that was bigger than anybody's, and it was louder than anybody's. And I don't know if I was as good as Hank. I think I was 23 rows back, and I think Hank was a little bit closer. And it just depended on when you got to the record store and got your tickets, where you were waiting in line, or paid somebody to wait in line, as some people did. That was a moment that I will never forget. Real quickly, just to add an addendum to that, after the show, one of the girls that I was with found out the hotel Van Halen was staying in. Don't ask me how, because I have no idea. So we went to the hotel and we went to the bar, and they had that's where they were set up, was in the bar hanging out, but they had security between where we saw them, but we couldn't get to them to say hello. But anyway, so we left there, went to Pizza Hut, and there was essentially 3 groups of people at Pizza Hut. Me, these 2 girls, and there was a group of Cuban Americans and a group of Western Florida rednecks. And a fight erupted in that restaurant between those 2 groups, and they smashed, the redneck guys smashed the manager over the head with a chair. We went outside. I got them out of there safely. The waitresses were screaming. It was wild. And the fight spilled into the parking lot. And one of the rednecks came over to my car to get a baseball bat. And I basically closed the door while he was trying to stick his arm in there. So anyway, that was that. And because these Cuban guys were chill, they were not really trying to get in a fight. They just also weren't going to be pushed around either. And so there was no way I was going to let them get hit. I want to say hello. We got a new member here, Weird Debbie M. Welcome. Thank you for becoming a member of Calling All Beings. I appreciate you, and thank you for contributing tonight. So we're gonna have to wrap it up. Hank, by the way, has done a version of Save It for Later that I have yet to download onto MP3 because YouTube, as it turns out, didn't like the fact that I was playing Eddie Vedder's version of Save It for Later. So I'm going to end up getting that from you, Hank. Thank you very much, Weird Debbie. I really appreciate that. I know it was like the beginning of a joke. It really was. But it was really surreal when it happened. The manager came out into the parking lot bloody from his head, and they had some gravel and rocks, and he was picking up rocks and throwing at them as they were driving their cars out, because they had already called the police. They had already called 911, and he protected his waitresses. He protected his restaurant, even after he got hit on the chair by these very rowdy rednecks. So yeah, I appreciate you. Hank, final thoughts on Ozzy, and then we'll let me go to Bia first, because we haven't talked to Boston Bia in a while. Bia, final thoughts about Ozzy, Black Sabbath. I think you're getting a feel for the era for metal.
Oh, definitely.
Metal was huge in that
Well,
era.
I remember when he was doing the reality shows, when that was like
Yes.
that's how I remember just kind of getting to know him in the family life, which is obviously a different side of him that, we didn't get to see.
Thank you, Helly B.
So yeah, I thought that, it was a great show. It was a great reality show. I do remember it well, but yeah, a legend has passed on, and he's definitely, how he spoke and how he sang were just 2 different people. Like, what an amazing voice.
You pointed that out. You're like, she's like, well, he can barely talk in his hand, he can barely put sentences together. Jack, give me the bloody remote. And then the next thing you know, he's singing Mr. Crowley. Right? It's amazing. It's amazing, right, Hank? The way people
don't ask him what day of the week it is, but put a mic in front of him and stick him on a stage, and he'll nail it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. They're the 1% of 1%ers that can do this, that can play at this level. I've heard people say, oh, well, this guitar player is better than that guitar player. Maybe there are people that they said, can play the guitar better than the Edge, but can they write songs and write harmonies and melodies and then put it on and have people buy it? You could sit there in your room all day long and just, make up riffs, but can you play with a band and make music that inspire people, that they love, that they want to hear? Is that the difference, Hank? What's the difference between someone who can just shred on the guitar and someone like Jimmy Page?
You have to be able to create. Just skill by itself, if you can't apply it to something, what are you going after?
Jerry.
If you wanted to be if your mind's set on selling out arenas or stadiums like Zeppelin, that's where you're at. There's bedroom, there's the closet gunslingers all day, but where are your priorities at? Because skill is there. There's so many people out there that have done so much with so little, as far as the actual skill that they bring, but the finished product is just huge. And I think anybody who might be a skilled musician who could like kind of smoke somebody on a level of skill, but would give anything for the level of success that they've had at such a lower level of actual skill, because that's just part of it. It's the whole thing.
Can I point you out a really silly example that's going to make you laugh, Hank? Look at the Stray Cats. These guys, can't play shit, but they could get on, Brian Setzer had a good voice. They could get on stage, dress up, and people listened. And they made music that people wanted to hear. And you'll still hear some of those songs on the radio. Are these guys gonna water anybody's eyes with skill? But it's about, anybody who plays music, if you're there playing music, I would say 99%, and I got to leave a 1% out there. 99% of the people that are playing music, there's a whole thing you could hear about Johann Sebastian Bach and his family trekking him as a 13-year-old all over Europe to sit there and play the piano and play his concertos and stuff, right? People who are playing music want to play in front of people. They want to see people clapping, but it's not only being able to play, it's also being able to create something that people want to listen to. What's the difference between Joe Satriani and Jimmy Page?
Well, and it's also, like you said, if you're going to bring up bands like the Stray Cats or Motley Crue or anybody that's kind of simplistic, the Ramones, Sex Pistols, anybody that where you put them on a scale for skill, it's not that high up there, but they were very successful. I think it comes down to passion for what they're doing. And if you are true to it and it's just, you're all about it. And that was a big thing for Ozzy. You knew the passion that man had for what he brought to the table, for the level of skill that he had. He brought so much more. And I think that's the difference.
And he didn't know that he was going to be a great singer. He's just like, for fuck's sake, I don't want to work in a factory all my life, with his Brummy accent. And
well, like we said, you put a mic in front of him and he'll get results, because he is never going to be in the Singers Hall of Fame alongside people that are just known for their skill. But the finished product that he brought to the table, you had to appreciate. And you had to appreciate what he brought as an individual.
And if for those of you out there who have not seen the 9 Lives of Ozzy documentary, and I want to say that there are a couple of things on YouTube that paint themselves as the 9 Lives documentary that are not. But Hank shared it with me. This guy lived in a room. I think he had 5 brothers and sisters total, something like 3 or 4 sisters and a brother, or 3 sisters and 2 brothers. When you see the size of his home, you will not believe it. And what we didn't know, we knew that he grew up poor in Birmingham, that his mom and dad worked in a factory. His dad worked the night shift until morning. And when hey, Mark, what's up? Dean College's own Mark Cunningham went to the same college I went to. And then his mother would go work in the factory. He didn't have a bathroom inside his house. They had an outhouse out the back in like a stall area. And this is in a row house. This is not having privacy like you're out in the country and you walk out the back door of your country home toward the woods and you go to the outhouse. This is a house when you walk out to take a dump, everybody can see that you're going to do that. And they peed in like a pot, like they did in the 1600s, for goodness sakes, in a castle in England, where you peed in a pot and you handed that to the staff to dump that. And then you had to go outside and do this is nuts that he lived that poor, Hank. He came from nothing, literally.
So many people with his story came from such beginnings because they understand what hard work will get you. And they understand you've got to get out there and get after it. that's the only way it's going to happen.
The same way an NBA player is one of these people who goes to the basketball court and they're like, I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do this. Bye, Linz. Have a great time at the Ozzy tribute show tonight. We appreciate you, love. The people that have done this are trying to get out of a circumstance that they're in, and it drives them to want to achieve success. And Ozzy is exactly like any of those athletes that said, this is my craft, and if I don't get good at this, I'm going to be like the rest of the people on my block that are stuck here and are going to die here. And amazing guy, amazing. I mean, there are a lot of singers in rock and roll that didn't come from those circumstances. Music should never cease to be pleasing to the listener. You should never cease to be music, or whatever the Mozart quote was. Yeah, and it doesn't really matter when music was created. Great music is timeless. So if there's a great song or a great piece of musical artwork, whether that's a concerto, be it piano or violin, like Mozart and Bach and Ludwig van Beethoven. I think that's who I was thinking of. I was thinking of Ludwig van Beethoven because he was from Austria and his family went through great lengths to take him to tour around. They really that was kind of the beginning of how you ruin a child star's life, was kind of the Ludwig van Beethoven story. Great music will never not be great. If it was a great song in the 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s or 2000s, it's a great song today, or 50s or 40s. Those songs are still great today. So people think, oh, it's old. You know what I mean? What is Thomas T? Thank you for coming in, popping in, Thomas T. Saying that Jimi Hendrix grew up rough and suddenly a superstar. What a change of life. Not to mention that Jimi Hendrix was in the Army and was a paratrooper.
101st Airborne, what's up?
Yeah, there you go. 101st Airborne. And let me tell you, at the time when Jimi Hendrix was there, not easy training today. Certainly even harder back then. There was no such thing as sports drinks with electrolytes back then. So Gatorade hadn't been invented yet. With that, Hank, I can't thank you enough for doing another music episode. I'm happy to find another artist to talk about and do another one, and they need not be dead for us to do that.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure, and it was good to do this. Like I told you when we first started talking about this, I didn't think it was going to bother me as much as it has that he was gone. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of his last chapter, but he just had to keep doing it. That's what he was all about. And I think, after that farewell show that we all saw at the stadium in Birmingham, it's like he was done. He did all he was set to do on this planet, and then he just left.
And so I have not watched that entire concert, but I will watch. So if somebody has a link and you want to hit me up on Twitter, I'm going to watch that. If it's available on YouTube, I'm going to watch that entire show. God bless those guys: Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, Bill Ward, and John Ozzy Osbourne. Amazing artists, and we need to do more of these shows. And Calling All Beings, we might be talking true crime, as you see up in the right hand corner of your screen with Boston Bia. We might be talking UFOs. We might be talking Bigfoot. We might be talking paranormal, or we might be talking heavy metal music with my dear friend Hank Edney of 40 years now, more than 40 years actually.
Anytime, brother.
All right,
my pleasure.
Thank you, Hank.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you also.
On behalf of Hank and Boston Bia, this is DJ saying peace out, one love, and we will see you down the road for another episode of Calling All Beings when we don't know what the hell is going to happen.